Hey everybody!
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you all enjoyed the previous session as much as I did. And a huge thank you to all the great speakers that we've had so far. Make sure you stick around because there's plenty more coming. I'm Darren Suffolk, the amazing Darren Suffolk, as Phil monikered me. I mean, I don't get that too often, but I'll take it. I'm the creative director for video services here at Superside. And we have a full service production offering here, as I'm sure you're well aware, which can be accessed as a modular way or as an end-to-end production solution. And throughout my career, I've seen the rising importance of video in marketing and its increasing ability to impact audiences, which makes this session we're about to have, all the more compelling. And I'm really excited to be joined by such great guests. Before we actually get into the content, just a quick reminder to tweet about what you're learning and make sure to tag Superside. We've got some cool prizes to give away, so don't miss out. And remember to submit any questions using the Q&A function, and we'll try our hardest to answer them before the end of the session. I know some of the questions that Phil posed to the guys from our audience were really fantastic in the session we've just watched. Now that the admin's out of the way, I'll get us started. As a creative director with a motion specialism, the idea of scaling video strategy to serve a full funnel, it's a puzzle that I'm constantly trying to unpick and constantly trying to solve from a creative perspective. So I'm really excited to give our audience the opportunity to hear from two proper thought leaders in the space. So I'll give them quick introductions and then I won't hold them up any longer. First of all, Robyn Showers, a strategic content marketing leader, currently heading up content at Vimeo, the world's most innovative video experience platform. If you're a marketer or a video pro, you'll already be well acquainted with their fantastic offering, which empowers everyone to create high quality video experiences to bring ideas to life. Vimeo is also a partner for this event, so big shout out to those guys. Robyn spent more than a decade creating social and search first content strategies for SaaS brands like Vimeo and HubSpot. She's obsessed with new content formats, building long-term programs and creating surprising brand moments. She once got a SaaS company retweeted by Lady Gaga, which obviously is a serious flex. So hi Robyn, thank you so much for joining us. And our second speaker, Katie Parkes, is a creative content marketing leader who's got a lot of experience building video teams and successful video production. She was most recently head of video marketing at Shopify, where she led a team of producers, strategists, and external partners in creating some of the best e-commerce video content on the internet. I'm sure we all have seen it at some point or another. And she's a creative leader, a film producer, a brand marketer, with experience from around the world. She's passionate about storytelling, video, and the future. So I'll welcome these two wonderful ladies. We're really excited to learn from you, and I think we've got the presentation teed up, so I'll pass it over to you. Take it away.
Sounds good. Awesome. And I do feel like, Darren, you said that you're going through this creative challenge of how to scale, and I feel like we're all kind of learning in public here. So hopefully we get some great questions and we can talk through it. If we can go to the next one. Very exciting. I think we have a quick agenda. So we have really, this presentation is in 3 different sections. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we see there is sort of an inflection point in content marketing right now, and really in marketing as a whole, but we're focusing on content marketing for this session. Because of that step change, because of that inflection point, Katie and I both feel like we need to rethink the funnel, and Katie's going to walk us through what we mean by that, how to rethink it. And then we've put together 3 full funnel video campaigns that kind of illustrate this, how to rethink the funnel and how to use video throughout that entire campaign. So hopefully you guys learned something. Really excited to chat with you all today. If we can go to the next slide. Yeah, content marketing is changing. I never do that well. One of my favorite things about content marketing is that content marketing is older than content marketing. If we go to the next slide, as long as there has been media that people want to consume and businesses who want to sell things to those people, there have been innovative folks connecting the dots between those two things. So if you go all the way back to the 1700s, the 1800s, you have Ben Franklin launching Poor Richard's Almanac, which is actually just basically a content marketing program selling his printing press to people. Um, the very first soap opera was actually on radio, and it was Procter and Gamble selling, you guessed it, soap to housewives listening to radio shows. And then actually later on, Procter and Gamble, or no, never mind, L'Oreal bought makeup.com way into 2011 as we're kind of like into the internet era. So across the entire, at every single stage, there have always been companies looking for ways to inject themselves in their audience's lives in a more meaningful way, right? In a way that tells a story, that helps them with their pain points, that does more than just advertise to them. What tends to change across this entire timeline, and I've kind of cheekily named the different eras of content marketing. We can have a nice argument about that in the comments if anyone's game. But what tends to change, what actually brings us from one era to another, is actually the technology. It's the ways we consume media and how the technology leads to those changes. So that's why we feel like there is a step change right now with the creator economy, AI, the TikTokification of everything, owned media, the way that we actually reach audiences as marketers. All of it changes the way that audiences are consuming media and therefore consuming our stories and messages. So if we can go to the next slide. I want to talk through a few of the things that are driving the most recent shift in content marketing. And I think this slide could have been 20 slides. There are so many, tiny nuances, but we've sort of grouped them into a couple of different buckets. One is attention. So that TikTokification of content marketing, we consume things in 6-second sound bites, and that has been actually studied by researchers. That 2015 stat about the attention spans being shorter than a goldfish is complete rubbish, by the way, but there is actually evidence that screen time has dropped over time. So back in 2004, psychologist Gloria Mark found that the average amount of screen time per participant spent on any screen was around 2.5 minutes, which honestly, anybody who is keeping track of their blog engagement metrics, like that's great. I would love for people to spend 2.5 minutes on every single article that we put out. I'm fine with that. But by around 2012, this had dropped to just 75 seconds. And more recently, it's as little as 47 seconds on the average screen. Additionally, and I find this really interesting because of all of the work we do with filmmakers at Vimeo, actual film and TV shot lengths have dropped themselves. So the actual like between shots and how long we can spend looking at one single setup, filmmakers are hip to that, and they're making that quicker, they're making that briefer. And even ads have decreased in length. The average ad 10 years ago was around 60 seconds. Today, in part thanks to TikTok, it's around 6 seconds. So there are a lot of things just competing for our attention, and our filters have gotten so good that you really have to grab people immediately. Additionally, the way that people look for information has shifted a little bit. We still use search, but search has been decentralized slightly. People are using Instagram to look for restaurant recommendations. They're asking ChatGPT questions. That's obviously in its infancy, but it's starting. And even within search, I actually think that search is the best evidence of this next point about points of view. Even within search, they are starting to put more emphasis on who the information is coming from. So forever, Google has, if you're an SEO, you probably know the acronym EAT, EAT, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness, I think are the three. So that's been a part of the algorithm for a really long time. But even recently, Google has been releasing products like Perspectives, which brings in stuff from Reddit and from other different social platforms, from Quora, because they know that people who are searching for different answers don't necessarily want what we businesses are always serving up to them. They want what other people are saying. They want to actually talk with fellow folks. I'm going to go through these next couple really quickly because I think they're a lot more self-evident. We all know, or anyone who works at a tech company has certainly felt the economy get a bit wobbly in recent months and years. And AI and tooling has also completely shifted how we're working, how quickly we can create things, and even the ways that we think about going to market with things. And then finally, and this I think is maybe the biggest shift in content marketing, but it's been happening much more slowly. As the market for content, as the amount of businesses who are creating content has increased, we've all kind of gotten hip to this strategy. There's so much noise out there that the bar for quality, the bar for what somebody will give their email address for, even just stop scrolling through their social feed long enough to take it in for, has just really, really risen. So what used to be impressive, a PDF ebook or something fairly static, just doesn't cut it today. So the key is really to find that sweet spot between high quality, how do you tell a really compelling, complex narrative, but quickly have that brevity still in there. So this is a really interesting challenge to us as marketers. And I think that what it really has done is that whereas the biggest challenge to us used to be reach, it used to be how do we actually get this in front of people? How do we find people where they are? Today, I think the biggest challenge facing content marketers and marketers in general is resonance. If we find them, how do we make them care? And so I think that that's actually a bit of a challenge to all of us here today is how do we be a part of the people creating content who create things that are worth caring about rather than using AI to create things that maybe are subpar, which is obviously incredibly possible, but it's also incredibly possible to use those powerful tools to tell better stories. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Yes. I know that one thing you and I chatted a lot about, Robyn, was just that with these advent of all these tools, we're just going to see so much more video content than we ever have before. We already are, like most of the internet is video, but that is going to mean that there's going to be a lot of crap and a lot of digital garbage. And so it's like wading through that, is going to be really key for any brand. And so making sure that you have that really strong point of view and that eye for quality, that's the only thing that's going to set you apart. And so with that being said, with all of these changes, it definitely means that we need to rethink everything. We need to change, the way that we think about the content marketing funnel. Sorry, next slide. Thank you. Especially with video, because it lives on so many different channels and can, exist in so many different places across the web. I think that the biggest shift that we are seeing here, and this has been happening over the last few years, is really that the customer journey that we used to look at with this perfect funnel in mind of like, we're going to create something as a hero video, and then they're going to go and watch this thing, and then they're going to watch the demo video, is just not clear anymore. It's not linear like it used to be. There are so many channels that a customer might find you on and interact with you on, that expecting them to take that traditional journey of, seeing that brand video, then the educational video, then the demo is just really not a super helpful way to think about a customer's content experience with you anymore. We still believe that you definitely need to create all of the content that you're making with the specific goals of the funnel in mind. You can't throw that out the window. It's still really important to be creating with intention and where you might want to catch that person along their journey. But with knowing that customer might, see a bottom funnel asset first, and then they might watch multiple other pieces of content and see a bunch of video ads, maybe listen to a podcast, et cetera, before or like during their entire journey. And then to add on top of that, they might talk to sales, a few times in between watching a bunch of different pieces of content, and then finally get to, the purchase phase. And so really what all of this means is that the storytelling across the funnel is super key. And that before, you used to be able to kind of, own, a topic at a specific stage of the funnel. And now you really need to own that topic for every stage of the funnel. It's not enough anymore to have that one great piece. You need to tell that full story about a topic and capture that audience attention across their journey and across all these other channels. And, like Robyn had said, content marketing is really just no longer only SEO and your company blog. You kind of need to be everywhere, everywhere that makes sense for your brand and your audience and the resources that you have, of course. But prioritizing video content, as much as written content, is the new norm. And because every brand, should also be leaning into different learning styles. Some people like to go for a walk and listen to a podcast to learn something new. I know I'm very much like that. Others want to read and they want the full thing. They want to highlight stuff and, digest it all, and have it, written out step by step, which is still incredibly valuable. But the vast majority of us, as we're seeing through data, is that we want to watch content. We want to see it. We want to hear about it from another person on video. And so thinking, of each stage of the funnel in terms of formats is also really important. And then approaching your content strategy from this video first mindset is just necessary to tell your story and to get your message out there in a competitive market. And another piece to kind of rethinking the funnel is to rethink what content you gate and really why you gate anything. Testing ungated content more often, or doing both at the same time, I think is also something really interesting to experiment with. And we'll get into that in some of the examples later. And it's because, again, keeping in mind that, adding that value to your brand and the customer journey at the outset will just increase the likelihood of them coming back to your channels and seeing you as that, trustworthy source. And so, we're all here today to talk about video. I think we all know at this point that, creating video content and looking at, how do you do video content is, why we make video content, and that having that battle internally in your organization is just really no longer a question. 82% of all internet content is video. People are watching hundreds of hours of videos a day. And, YouTube, of course, is the second largest search engine in the world. And so because the format of video isn't a question, the real question, for you and your teams is to, ask yourself how you create a smart strategy around video. And Robyn and I talked a lot about this, and we feel like, and this word is kind of a buzzword right now in content marketing, but it really begins with thinking about repurposing content. And repurposing isn't always easy. That was something that we really wanted to call out. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, just cut this into all kinds of different formats. And,
it's a shortcut.
Exactly. Like, it'll be so easy. We'll just chop this up into little bits. And it's like, no, I was just having this conversation with someone yesterday, actually. And they were like, do you know how long it takes me to go through an hour-long podcast and find all of the right clips and the right moments and put together like a 15 or 30 second, sizzle reel to then promote that podcast or, cut it down for social? Like, when it's done right, it's not always easy, and it doesn't, like I said, just mean that you're copying and pasting that same work into a different format. What it means is that it's reusing the research and the ideas in a new format. And we still need, humans at the helm to be finding those really great, sound bites and looking at that research and thinking about, okay, well, we wrote it out this way, but how could we actually visualize that with motion graphics? Or, how do we bring this to life through, a 3D example? Or, how do we make a mockumentary about this instead and then do something really fun for TikTok? And so it is looking at the idea and challenging that to, or challenging yourself to figure out how you might display that in a new format. But with that being said, I do also want to call out that it can still mean using the same content across, the funnel and on different channels just to experiment. I was also speaking with someone the other day who was trying to kind of speak to the idea that, creating specific types of video content across Instagram and TikTok, is like dead, because they had tried, by using the same video across all those channels, and they had really great success. And because at the end of the day, if you're making something of quality with that really strong point of view, like we talked about earlier, you're cutting through that noise, that video should still perform, really anywhere that your audience is resonating with it. And so I think, both of these things when it comes to repurposing are really key to keep in mind. Is, it's you need to do it with intention and purpose, but then also be looking for, how you can experiment. And, there's so many great examples of repurposing. One way to look at it could be, taking a longer form blog post that breaks down a specific topic, and then, using that data and content to produce, a thought leadership or how-to video for YouTube. Then taking those insights from the blog and sharing them on social. And then, maybe you invite, a customer on your podcast to talk about the same topic, and so on. So it's really, again, about what we spoke about earlier, and looking at how do you tell that story then across the funnel and break that out across multiple different formats and channels. And so speaking of repurposing and exploring the video formats across the funnel, we have 3 really great examples to walk you through. And so, yeah, we're going to move on to those now. I'm super excited.
Awesome. Yeah. And I do think that A lot of what we're doing here is repurposing the ideas, right? We're telling the same story, we're turning it around and kind of examining it from every angle. So I'm putting our own team under the spotlight here, and this campaign is actually very much still in play. This is a year-long campaign, so I won't be sharing a lot of stats just yet. Apologies if anyone is disappointed by that, but I do think that it's a good example of a campaign that was born out of a very top of funnel need to change an audience's awareness levels, right? So Vimeo, as many of you may know, has a bit of a history as kind of we've said it as the hipster cousin of YouTube. It
So good.
originally was a
I've never heard that before. I love that.
it originally was a place for filmmakers to put their videos, and it's still a great place for filmmakers to put their videos. And obviously, we see a lot of people host content and embed content. But I've been doing a lot of these marketing presentations, and one of the things that always shocks me is how few people in the audience, and this is on our team to do a better job of, but how few people in the audience know that we do so many other things, right? And so that's really the impetus behind this campaign, was us saying, okay, how do we change the perception? How do we tell marketers that we see them, that we understand them, and also that we have like all of these tools for repurposing content? We have creation tools, we have record tools, we have webinar tools, we have hosting tools, we have trimming tools, like really the list goes on. It's a very horizontal platform, which is part of what I love about it. But yeah, so that was really where this campaign film, which you'll see kind of big on the top here, was that's where that idea came from. So it was a bit of it's very technicolor, it's very fun, it's got a lot of unexpected moments, a lot of animation, and it was definitely the top of funnel play. But all of the main messages that were in here, which were we wanted to help people create branded videos at scale, repurpose with ease, and then also use video everywhere with consolidated reporting. We then pulled through to all of the other campaigns that were rolling up to this larger audience initiative. So we have a ton of social and ad cut downs of this video and others that were sort of like, related to this basic idea. We've actually been doing a monthly event series, and we'll talk about someone that we had on the monthly event series in 2 slides from now. But that's been exploring this idea kind of more tactically. So sitting down with folks who are already doing this really, really well and asking them really to unpack their process for us and to, walk us through, how are you using video across the funnel? How are you chopping these up into different pieces? How are you creating different videos? What does it actually look like internally? And then finally, bringing this idea all the way through to our product videos. So reusing a lot of the same imagery, reusing a lot of the same animation, because we really wanted it to all feel very cohesive and like it is part of the same story. But we dream them up as part of one campaign, even though they're very different videos. And so they're all kind of like different sides of the same story, the story of how do we make marketers' lives easier? How do we make it easier for people to have video? And if we want to go to the next slide, yeah. Katie, take it away.
Yes. So the Shopify example that we have here is very similar actually to the way that Vimeo approached it, where we had 3 different distinct videos that we designed for each stage of the funnel. And really the intent here was to tell the overarching platform story of the Shopify Plus product. For those of you who don't know, Shopify Plus is the plan and product for enterprise e-commerce brands. And there were product differentiators that we needed to speak to, and it was a bit of a different brand and a bit of a different, or a sub brand, I should say, and a bit of a different approach than the traditional Shopify marketing. And so, what we decided to do was look at how do we tell that story, like I said, across the funnel and leverage existing footage that we already had, while also investing in some net new content that we hoped would have some revenue benefit for us. And so the first thing that we made was a 30-second sizzle reel. And this was a top of the funnel, brand awareness play. This lived on the homepage of the website. It also lived on YouTube. And there were ad cut downs, and we even tested out on YouTube, like just using the 30-second reel as an ad itself to drive more traffic to the channel and to drive more demand. build up those audience pools. This one was actually really interesting because we used a ton of existing customer footage. So we actually didn't film anything like net new for this video. It was just repurposing, like I said, content that we'd already shot. We even, used and leveraged some of our customers' video footage as well. And then really just, added some super slick music and figured out which value props we really needed to speak to that would share our unique point of view, and kind of then package it all together in this super spicy way with flashy motion graphics. And then we also actually translated this video into multiple languages. We used it at events all over the world. And so it really became a kind of multi-purpose brand message for us, which was awesome. And then when we looked at the middle of the funnel, the kind of step below that was in how do we then take this, the bigger point of view value prop messages and bring them down another level so that we can start to explain to people, not just like what we're about, but what the product can actually do for them. And so this was really a product explainer video. At the end of the day, we used, actors, we created a fake shoe store. And the idea here was really to show off our product in different customer-based scenarios. And it really just told the story of the product, in the context of our customers. So, the people that are actually buying from commerce brands. And we did it this way so that, our customers would be able to see the impact that our product could have on their operations, but also the lives of their customers themselves. And, we used this video, across our website, also existed on YouTube as well, and created ad cut downs and did a lot of experimentation with advertising here. The main kind of use of this was really by the sales team. And so it also lived on kind of an open landing page that, sales team members would send to prospects, in initial cold emails, or, after they'd had an initial call, to just kind of reinforce the messaging, reinforce what the product could do. And that landing page alone, brought in, and influenced millions of dollars in revenue. And so really just taking a look at, how can you extend that product message then one step further, had a ton of benefit for us. And then the third video that we looked at for the bottom of the funnel, and really the conversion piece here, was, a 10-minute long platform demo that went super in depth into the product offering with actual real demos of the product. And this was initially designed to be gated and to drive leads, but we actually ended up experimenting with putting it on YouTube as well. We acknowledged that there was kind of something happening on YouTube where there were other people kind of telling our product story for us. There were a lot of videos out there that were like, oh, this is the difference between the Shopify plans, or this is what you get when you sign up for Shopify Plus. And we were like, hey, we should probably own that narrative, or we should at least, be speaking to what the product offering is. And we already had this awesome demo video. And so, even though it was designed for this purpose of generating leads, we, ungated it, put it on YouTube, and actually kept both, experiences in play at the same time. We had them running simultaneously, and there was some discussion about whether or not that was the right decision to be made here with the bottom of funnel asset, and whether or not it would take away from the conversion effort. But what we saw is that it actually just overall enhanced our ability to tell the story of our product, and not to mention that on a new platform, on a new channel, and just really furthered that product narrative for us overall. And so, when I mentioned before about experimenting with ungating and gating assets, I think this is a really great example of doing that, and not being afraid to just kind of explode that narrative across the board, and remember that customer journey isn't linear, and that you still might be able to drive leads by gating an asset while also, owning your narrative on a different channel. And the last thing I'll call out here was that with this video funnel, the one thing that we wanted to make sure we did really well was to link each video to each other. And so, all of the videos that lived on our .com pages there were CTAs that drove people to the next video to watch. So even though the customer journey is not linear, we still did everything that we could to try to drive people down this funnel. And we did the same thing on YouTube as well. So, if someone had watched This Is a Reel, the next suggested video would be the platform story. And then from there, the next video to suggest was the demo, and so on. And we even had them kind of backlinked to each other. And so I would recommend, when you are looking at kind of building out these systems on the actual channels themselves, to there is still an opportunity for you to try and create that that kind of moment for your customers that you designed all this content for to begin with. Anyway, next example.
I love that. I feel like that is often overlooked, the last little details, which are so, so important to the journey. So this is a story that is not my own, but we had Semrush, Olga and Andrew are amazing. We had them on the show a couple of weeks ago on Debrief. And I have honestly not stopped thinking about their campaign since then. They are also a software as a service, a SaaS brand, who do they basically B2C or B2B marketing is pretty much outlawed at Semrush. They very much focus on emotive storytelling, on lifestyle content, on how do we get to the human behind this story. I actually find it really impressive that this is a story about an SEO who works at Peacock, which is a pretty well-known company. And I think they barely mention it, right? Because the focus is really on Gabby as the hero of this story. And so they did a series of really beautiful hero videos of Gabby, she's a DJ by night, she's an SEO by day. And so they're telling her story of how she lives life on her own terms in New York, how Semrush is a big part of how she's able to do that because she has all of the tools at her disposal to do her job and do her job well. And I feel like customer stories are almost always middle or bottom of the funnel, and we kind of put them there. Often they're serving sales and we kind of give them a job to do and we don't really let them out of that box. And what I love about this campaign is that so from one shoot in New York, they created actually hundreds of pieces of content that lived across all different channels, across landing pages, across YouTube, across social. My cat is going to come in and pay us a visit. So apologies, everyone, or not apologies. And all of those pieces of content they were native to the platform, but they told very much the same story, right? They were really showing Gabby's perspective, building Gabby's world in Semrush, which I just thought was brilliant. Like the entire thing was really, really well thought out and put together. And the team shared with us that it showed in the results that they saw 4 times the typical performance that they saw in this stage of the funnel. And that this campaign, while it was, I'm going to pull him up. Yes. Hello.
Check him out.
He's very fluffy. He's like, we're talking about video. CaaS invented video. I should be on this.
Exactly. They own it. Like on the
internet. But yeah, it was just, I thought this was a great proof point of, a great story it's going to sell. It's going to kind of perform at every level. If you find the right story, if you find the right narrative to pull through.
It really speaks to me as a creative, this idea, because it's that thing of even if you're doing B2B or B2C or whatever version of communication, you are talking to a person, right? It's always somebody you need to have an impact on the other side of that video. And this idea of making it a human connection and getting somebody emotionally invested in your brand this way, like it makes perfect sense. And it also allows you to make beautiful films. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, I completely agree. I know that let's see, I think we have some final takeaways. I know we have like 10 minutes left. Should we do final takeaways or do we want to skip to Q&A? What do y'all think?
I'm easy. We've got some awesome questions. I've saved up some questions of my own as well to kind of make the most of my opportunity to pick your brains. But yeah, I'm happy to jump into some questions first. Do we think?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Cool.
We could also just put the slide up if you want while people ask questions. It's really just a summary of the presentation. Yeah. Just in case it prompts a question itself, right? So my first question, before I jump into these great questions we've got from the audience, I know something really resonated with me on the Shopify example we shared as well, which was this idea of really sweating assets, right? Making the most of what you've shot. And obviously we talked about that in the Semrush example as well. And it's something that the relationship Superside tries to create with its partners is built on this idea of a longer term engagement rather than a brief by brief interaction. So you gain an understanding not only of the goals and aims of
your partner, but also the material you've got to work with, and how you can rework these things, and ultimately you get the most out of your content that way. I mean, what do you think was key, Katie, to you at Shopify, reimagining that kind of initial thing in so many different ways to serve so many different parts of the funnel?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think really at the end of the day, it's like about the relationships that you're building internally. And I mean, I know that might be a little bit different with the agency side of things, but
Yeah.
for me, it was really about how do I go about, building out these briefs for these videos and making sure that like every single person who is, attached to a distribution channel at this company understands what we're trying to do, they understand the goals behind the video, and they understand that there are opportunities for collaboration, and getting that done ahead of the shoot date so that you have like a really good idea of, what these other people might be looking for. With that being said, all the ideas didn't always happen. And sometimes we parked some of them and then, turn them into assets later down the road, or we just, have to go ahead and create anything anyway because other teams weren't ready. But then we still had like set it up in a way that would have enabled them to use it in the future. And I know you and I were talking about this the other day, that even that shot in the platform story video of like the fake store that we created and all the assets, within that, of the person walking with the shoes and the fake AR, videos and stuff. Yeah. All of that was able to get like broken out from that video and then used on different product pages on the website, and in different social ads, and in even different demand generation campaigns. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, if you're creating a video, with all of those key aspects of the story that you're trying to tell about your product, what you're making should reflect all of that, and then have the ability to have that long of a life. I think, if you're creating something with that much intention and that much purpose, the hope is that, it could live everywhere, and that you could pull out a lot of that juice to use elsewhere.
Cool. And I think the other question I'd have for you guys before we dive into the questions from the viewers, is this idea of, when you start now, knowing that we've created this more fluid version of a funnel that doesn't really have a top and a bottom, you can engage with it in any way. Do you think there is a key or an important thing to start with when you're starting the creative journey about thinking how, imagining how content feeds this new version of a funnel? What do you think there's any kind of key consideration there?
I think you have to start with a core message, which I think was always true for a great creative brief. And Katie, I love what you said about, like, there's such an art to a good creative brief. It really kicks off the right collaboration. But I do think that this version of the funnel, that becomes even more important, like finding what is universal rather than finding what is really distinct. And probably also like building out, like you can, if in a brief you're building out, okay, we want like in the Gabby example, like we want the audience to feel, like they can do anything, right? Or we want them to feel, like bold and daring. Like you can build that into product content. You can build that into a customer story. You can build those feelings, I think, into. So I think like getting that, it becomes a lot more important to get that core really, really right.
Yes. Yeah, I would echo that. It's almost like you got to figure out what your through line is, right? And if you can figure that out, I to be honest, I would normally start with like almost looking at a mid-funnel approach too, and like, because that is typically encompassing some of your product messaging, but then also some of your brand messaging at the same time, at least when it comes to video assets. And that would always really help me then go like, okay, this is like everything that we're trying to say, and that one's usually the hardest because it also has to be like the most succinct, and then you're taking everything and trying to pare it down into like a really concise, strong message. But that lets you like save stuff for the top. You can go like, okay, well, if we can't use this message here, then we're going to really drive home that message at the top of the funnel, and then bring this other stuff back down, to the demo and so on. And so that, looking at it that way always helped me. But then, making sure that through line is going through everything is so important.
And I suppose if you've got that through line, there's always a value to what an end user, a viewer, is seeing in your content, right? Because you've got to see that as a value exchange. Someone's giving you their time, that idea of brevity being super important and people having a low attention span. As long as every piece of content actually has a return on the investment of time, then the likelihood is that engagement is going to continue and people are going to keep interacting with the content, right?
Yeah, one of the funniest things about attention is that even though our attention spans are going down, it's not like they're zero, right? Like there was I'm trying to remember the source of this stat. I think it was Deloitte that said that 73% of people have binged 5.5 hours straight of Netflix. Which I think just proves, haven't we all? Which I think just proves like we will pay attention to stories, right? We'll pay attention as long as it's interesting, as long as it's compelling, but that's hard. That is not something to be taken lightly. It's really hard to find things that are interesting and compelling, which is part of why the repurposing is so important. Once you do, you want to get as much juice out of it as possible.
I'll dive into our viewer questions then to make sure we get to answer a couple. First of all, I've got Will, who on this subject asks us, how much do you think story plays into the tolerability of length? So we talked about Gabby's example, and I think it's quite an important question, right? He's got some examples. He said, I think about Apple's 9-minute escape from the office advertisements, and obviously this idea of, hour-plus long podcasts as well. Have you guys got any thoughts on that as a subject?
I would watch an entire series of Apple's Escape from the Office if they turned
That's
that
amazing.
into. So I guess quite high. Yeah, I agree with that. I do think that a really good story, you will earn the ability to take more time to tell it. That being said, I also think it's not necessarily how good the story is. It's also probably how complex it is, what channel you're consuming it on. Like there's definitely a difference in, if you're scrolling the feed, your attention span, just because by nature of where you are, no matter how good the story is, it's going to be really difficult to get you to stop for longer than a couple of minutes at the very, very, most. Katie, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredibly important. I would even my team sometimes would go back to those, what is it, like Pixar's 9 rules of storytelling. I can't remember how many they have, but and essentially their idea is you throw an obstacle in front of your character, and then you throw another one and another one, another one. As soon as you think you can't handle anymore, throw another one. And then it's and so especially when it came to customer storytelling, and there was one kind of docu-series that we worked on about a year or so ago where we told kind of the inception of a new brand and how they launched on Shopify Plus, and with that, it was so key to think about how do we just amp the drama and make sure that we are continuing to keep people engaged and interested. Because they were 10 long-minute episodes, and it was kind of the first foray that we were doing into longer form content. And I am here to say that it works, at least for our experiment, those kinds of videos alone that were extremely storytelling driven, increased our average watch time on YouTube by 1.5 minutes. And so I think there is definitely, like you were saying, Robyn, with attention spans, there's an audience for longer form content. And I think when you take storytelling seriously and you really do try to put a ton of effort into that and look at the beats properly, and especially from that human perspective of how do you make those pieces of drama really relatable to someone else's life? And you can do that in product content too. It's a matter of looking at the principles and figuring out how to make them work for your brand.
Yeah, we have someone on our team who focuses specifically on courses and educational content, and she uses the hero's journey to map out the educational courses. Yeah, which I love as an approach, and I do think makes them so much more fun to consume. She's brilliant. Awesome. Yeah,
and guys, it absolutely breaks my heart because I could genuinely talk to you guys for another hour. Maybe we should carry on afterwards. I'm game.
Superside after party.
Yeah, 100%. But just to finish that off, I guess I'd love to say thank you so much to Katie and to Robyn for taking the time to talk to us. It's been super, super interesting. We really appreciate the insights and all the knowledge. I know I'm going to take something away from it that I can apply to what I do. So thank you.